Hello friends, my name is Satyanarayan and in this session we are going to take a look at a very important topic in English known as jumbled passages. Some people might also refer to this topic as parajumbles. So what exactly is a jumbled passage? Well, as the name itself suggests, you will be given a passage comprising of multiple sentences. However, the sentences would not be given in a logical order, which means they would be haphazardly arranged, and it is up to you, the student, to arrange them so as to make a coherent passage. So for example, we are given a few sentences. A. She was also a great dancer. B. Anita was a very popular girl at school. C. She was good at studies. D. Hence everyone liked her. Now, it is up to you to decide in what order should these four sentences be arranged so as to make a coherent passage. Now, if we take a look at the four sentences, the first thing which pops up is that while sentences A, C and D refer to the subject using pronouns, only statement B refers to the subject using a proper noun. And convention dictates that we generally start introducing a person using the proper noun and then substitute it with the pronoun. So, statement B, Anita was a very popular girl at school, is the first statement in the paragraph. We also can understand that statement D, hence everyone liked her, should be at the end, because the word hence which starts the sentence denotes a conclusion or a summary for the passage. So we are left with statements A and C. If we take a look at these two statements, she was also a great dancer, implies that there is some other quality which has already been described before, which means statement C, she was good at studies, must come before the statement A, she was also a great dancer. So if we read out these sentences in this format, Anita was a very popular girl at school, she was good at studies, she was also a great dancer, hence everyone liked her. Then we do get a coherent passage. So there are certain cues which we can use to identify sequences. Let us take a look at some of these cues. One, we have obviously seen something called the beginning statement. In the given example, the use of the proper noun indicated that that particular statement could have been the one to begin the passage. We can look for ending statements. Like we saw that the word hence denoted the conclusion and hence the last statement of the passage. There are some things known as fixed pairs. In the previous example, we saw that there were two qualities described. One, she is good at singing, and the second, she is also good at dancing. So because they are talking about the same thing in the same sense, these two statements should come together, and the order in which they are mutually arranged is also predetermined. For example, if we are given the following sentences, he spearheaded the Quit India movement in 1942. Gandhiji was born in Porbandar. He was shot dead in 1948. He went to London for his education. We can understand that this sentence group talks about the life and times of Mahatma Gandhi. And when we are talking about the life of a person, we go about in a particular order. We start with the birth, then the childhood, then youth, then middle age, and end with the death of the person. So in this example, the first sentence should obviously be Gandhiji was born in Porbandar. Next we talk about his education. So he went to London for his education. The third should be he spearheaded the Quit India movement in 1942. And the fourth statement must be he was shot dead in 1948. Now, this is something known as a chronological sequence. So, we understand one more cue to identify sequences where the beginning statement was obviously the proper noun. We talked about Gandhiji. The ending statement was obviously the one related to his death. But more importantly, because we know the events in his life and the time at which they occurred, we can easily set them in a particular sequence. And this is known as setting the sentences using chronological order. Now, let us try a few examples to get a sense of how to go about solving questions on jumbled passages. The instructions are as follows. In each of the following questions, there are 6 sentences marked S1, S6, P, Q, R, and S. The positions of S1 and S6 are fixed, which means S1 is the given beginning of the statement and S6 is given as the end statement. You are required to choose one of the 4 alternatives which would be the most logical sequence of the sentence in the passage. Okay, here's the first example. Statement 1 says, work with retarded children in particular involves superhuman patience and long delayed rewards. Statement P says, another woman faithfully spent 2 hours a day, 5 days a week with a bedridden retarded girl. Q says, it was 3 years before the girl made her first cut in a piece of paper. R, the girl had never before responded or recognized anyone. S, one woman decided to teach a young brain-damaged girl how to use scissors. And the last statement is, after 5 years, the girl finally began to smile when her foster grandparents entered the room. Now, the first S1 is a general statement about treating and dealing with retarded children. Statements P, Q, R, S and S6 talk about specific examples to elaborate this point. Now, we can quickly see that both statements Q and statements S talk about a girl who is learning how to cut a piece of paper. So Q and S have to be together, and we also know that these two should be in the sequence of first S and then Q, because it's first you teach a young girl and then she learns the taught skill. So SQ is a particular sequence. The remaining P and R is about a woman being teaching a young girl who is not able to recognize anyone, and the ending statement clearly indicates that after 5 years she has finally learned to recognize. So we do know that SQ has to be in the beginning. Now there is only one option which has SQ as the first 2 statements. Now although option A, P, S, Q, R does have S and Q together, the statements P and R are split, which is not the case, and hence the correct option has to be option D, S, Q, P, R. The next example states, the first statement is, he tried the door. P, the room was neat and clean. Q, then he stepped into the room. R, he waited for a minute or 2. S, it opened easily and he peeped in. S6, he was careful not to touch anything. Now all that is required is to identify what happens after you try a door. When you try to open a door, it will either open or it will not open. And statement S clearly states it opened easily and he peeped in. So the 4 sentences should have S as the first one. And we have only one answer option, option D, which has S as the first statement. So we need not actually think further and try to analyze the remaining sentences, but we can directly mark option D as the answer. But for the sake of clarity, let us see whether the sequence S, P, R, Q makes sense. So let us read out these sentences. He tried the door. It opened easily and he peeped in. The room was neat and clean. He waited for a minute or 2. Then he stepped into the room. He was careful not to touch anything. Well, does make sense. You try to open the door, it opens. You first see whether there is something inside. It is neat and clean, and it's only after you see and observe what is inside that you step into the room. So the fourth option, SPRQ, is the right answer. Let us take a look at this example. Statement 1 states Jawaharlal Nehru was born on November 14th. P. He loved children. Q. On this day, children take part in many activities. R. Sports, music, drama and debates are arranged in schools. S. That is why his birthday is celebrated as Children's Day. S6. Exhibitions of photographs of Pandit Nehru showing his lifetime are also arranged in some schools. Now, if we take a look at the concluding statement, S6, it talks about the celebration of Children's Day, that is the birthday of Pandit Nehru, in schools. And we have Q and R, the two statements also talking about various activities. So, we should have Q, R and S6 together. Statements P and statement S are in fact explaining why Jawaharlal Nehru's birthday, November 14th, is celebrated as Children's Day. So we have P, which should be the first statement, followed by S. So there is only one option where P is followed by S. PSQR, option B, should be the right answer. Let us read out the sentences in that order to see whether it makes sense. Jawaharlal Nehru was born on November 14th. He loved children. That is why his birthday is celebrated as Children's Day. On this day, children take part in many activities. Sports, music, drama and debates are arranged in schools. Exhibitions of photographs of Pandit Nehru showing his lifetime are also arranged in some schools. Well, PSQR does make sense, and that is the right answer. One more example. The beginning statement says, Kabir knew that Ramananda got up very early in the morning and went down on the steps of the ghat to bathe in the waters of the sacred Ganges. P says, as Ramananda came down the steps before daybreak for his usual bath, he trod on the sleeping man. Q says, Kabir at once jumped up and threw himself at the feet of the preacher. R. Ram Ram, he exclaimed in astonishment. S says, one dark night, Kabir went to the ghat and lay down on one of the river steps. And the concluding statement is, he said, you have given me the mantra Ram Ram. I have become your disciple. Okay, now this is a story, and such examples are typically very easy to solve. We know that the opening statement says Kabir knew that Ramananda got up very early and went down on the steps of the ghat. So we have to open the story with what he did with this information. And option statement S, one dark night Kabir went to the ghat and lay down on one of the river steps, does seem to be the right follower. In fact, if you take a look at the other statements, we have P, where Ramananda is trotting on the sleeping form of Kabir. Once someone trods on him, the person wakes up, or the person who has trod on the sleeping man exclaims something. All said and done, it's very clear that the statement which should follow statement 1 should be S. That is, one dark night Kabir went to the ghat and lay down on one of the river steps. And there is only one answer option, D, SPRQ, which starts with S. So let us just read out these sentences to see if the story makes any sense in that order. Kabir knew that Ramananda got up very early in the morning and went down on the steps of the ghat to bathe in the water of the sacred Ganges. One dark night, Kabir went to the ghat and lay down on one of the river steps. As Ramananda came down the steps before daybreak for his usual bath, he trod on the sleeping man. Ram Ram, he exclaimed in astonishment. Kabir at once jumped up and threw himself at the feet of the preacher. He said, you have given me the mantra Ram Ram. I have become your disciple. This does make sense. So the correct option has to be SPRQ, that is option D. Let's take a look at one final example. The opening statement given is, the houses in the Indus Valley were built of big bricks. P. This staircase sometimes continued upwards onto the roof. Q says access to the upstairs room was by a narrow stone staircase at the back of the house. R. The drains were incorporated in the walls. S. The houses had bathrooms and water closets, rubbish chutes and excellent drainage systems. S6, they led outside into covered sewers which ran down the sides of the streets. Okay, now if you take a look at statements P and Q, P says this staircase, which indicates that the word staircase has to be mentioned somewhere previously, and options R and S do not talk about staircases. Only option Q talks about staircase. So we clearly can identify that P and Q are a pair, with Q being the first statement and P being the second. If you take a look at the options, we have option A and option D eliminated because P comes before Q. From option C and option B, both have Q as the first and P as the second. But in case of option C, Q and P are split with R in between. R talks about drains and S also talks about the drainage system. So we cannot have R and S separate from each other, which leaves us with only one option, that is option B, Q, P, S, R. Let us take the statements in that order and see if they make sense. The houses in the Indus Valley were built of baked bricks. Access to the upstairs rooms was by a narrow stone staircase at the back of the house. This staircase sometimes continued upwards onto the roof. The houses had bathrooms and water closets, rubbish chutes and excellent drainage systems. The drains were incorporated in the walls. They led outside into covered sewers which ran down the side of the streets. Well, this sequence makes excellent sense, and hence we have QPSR, option B, as the right answer. Well, let us quickly recap what we saw so far. We have seen how we go about solving questions on jumbled passages. So we have certain cues where we can identify either an opening sentence or a closing sentence or a fixed pair. Sometimes we can try to identify the chronology if one such thing exists. But the most important thing is practice. There is one long and very awkward way of solving such examples. If you are not able to identify an opening sentence or a closing sentence or a fixed pair, or you are not able to identify the chronology of the given sentences, then what you can do is just pick each answer option and read out the sentences in that particular sequence. Whichever answer sequence makes sense should be the right answer. However, this method has a flaw. If out of the 4 given forms, if the last option happens to be the correct statement answer, then you would have repeated the same sentences again and again at least 4 to 5 times, and that is a colossal waste of time. So leave such questions to the end if you are not able to quickly identify the sequence, and you can use the brute force method to solve the questions. Anyway, good practice should help you easily identify how to put jumbled passages in the right sequence. My name is Satyanarayan. We just had a session on how to solve jumbled passages in English. Wish you all the best. Have a good day.